fun session that we're going to have, just kind of talking about families and celebration of this day. So we've already kind of been talking about the welcome, and our first person to talk about family is going to be Amy, and then followed by Greg. And then Amy's going to talk a little bit more about the Calumet and Cross Heritage Society, and then we can open up for questions at the end. So Amy, if you want to go ahead and get going.
Renee, would it be okay if I just mentioned a few accolades?
Oh, absolutely. I'm sorry, Erin. Yes,
that's
please,
okay.
Go ahead.
I just want to mention that the planning committee of sorts for this was myself and Renee. Renee really, after homecoming, picked up the interest in coordinating something. We were going to try and have something in person at the center that was broadcast, but we weren't able to kind of clear that in time. So that's why we ended up doing all virtual, almost as default. But we're really hoping that we'll be able to have an in-person with a remote connection next year. So special thanks to Renee, and then also Amy and Greg, who really on some pretty short notice stepped up to share their stories with us today. And Lindsay, who found the event and volunteered to be our tech assistant. So I just really want to thank all of you for picking this up. One of the things that we've been told by our legal counsel for restoration is that holding consistent events is a really great way to demonstrate our community. So even though we haven't been able to meet in person, just having these virtual events and having people attend and keeping that drumbeat, that steady drumbeat of our community is actually really, it is really important. So thank you all for taking the time. Another thing that I just want to mention is that, if you're not sure about your family lineage or how you're connected to any of our families within the nation, it's possible to request your family tree from the office. There is a small processing fee. I think it's somewhere around $30 or $40, but you can contact Linda Shady and get that. She just needs to know the name and the full name of the youngest person in the family, and then she can work back from there, and you can get a hard copy print of your family tree. And that's really what started off my personal journey to learn more about my ancestors. So I'd strongly encourage folks to do that. And also a reminder that ID cards are also available through the office. So if you want an ID card, Linda just needs like a 4x6, like good, fairly large, like passport photo is too small, but like a 4x6 photo of your face. And, kind of like your shoulders and your face, kind of like a driver's license. But so if you're reaching out to Linda for either of those reasons, anyway, that I just want you guys to know that that's available, and you can print off a request for the ID card on the website. So I hope that this is an inspiring presentation, and that we can keep having these conversations in the future. So now I'm going to pass it off to Renee to be our MC for the rest of the time.
Thank you so much.
Renee, can you hear me now?
Hey, Greg. Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. I was there before. I had a quick call with my wife, and then I came back and I was talking and nobody could hear me. So I'm glad you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay.
So again, I want to thank you for joining, and Erin and Greg and everybody for helping kind of pull together this brainstorming idea to at least talk about some family and kind of a learning session for everybody. So our first speaker that we have today is Amy. So Amy, if you want to go ahead and start, I'm so excited to hear about your family and see some pictures maybe.
Yeah, really quick, I'll throw up the pictures so you don't have to look at my face, but you can see my awesome family who I just think the world of. So on the left-hand side of the screen, this is a big family gathering that we had in the late 90s. Just sort of, it's around Christmas time. You can tell by some of the sweaters on the front. And around Christmas is when my grandma's birthday is with her twin sister. So can you see my cursor at all?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So right here, this is my grandma Marcella and her twin sister Madeline, and Marcella Besaw, Madeline Crow. Their maiden names were Briette, and they are the children, along with all of the siblings right here, the children of my great grandma Flora Welch. And Flora Welch was also Flora Robinson. That was her second marriage. And pictured in here are my, I don't know which one is which, but you can tell these are the twins. And then we think this is my Aunt Dorothy, who is right in the middle with this red Christmas tree sweater. And my Uncle Oscar, who unfortunately had passed away before we'd had this big family gathering. And I was one of those kids that just loved to sit around my gram and her siblings and just hear stories. And oh, really quick, I'll tell you who all these people are. This is on the far right is my Aunt Goldie, my Uncle Arnold, my Uncle Curly, who some of you may know as Earl Robinson, my Aunt Dorothy, my grandma, and my Auntie Madeline. And the siblings who aren't in the photo are Adele Heinz, Dale Robinson, Oscar Briette, and Virgie Briette. I'll tell you a story about Virgie a little bit later. But I was reminiscing with my dad. We were in a car ride. I was with my grandma, my Auntie Madeline, my Aunt Dorothy, and we were driving through Menominee Reservation on our way to go get a soft serve ice cream. And the girls start giggling in the back of the car and they start counting. They don't start counting from one. I can't remember the number they start counting from, but they start counting and they picked up the counting right away together. Like they all just sort of knew what they were counting. And I couldn't figure out what it was. I'm looking out the window. I don't see any animals. I don't see any different kinds of trees. I can't figure it out. And so I finally, work up the gumption to ask. And they say that they're counting the turns in the road, that's when they went away to boarding school, that's how they knew how far away they were from their home, was those turns in the bend. And they would go in a horse-drawn buggy, and they could tell exactly where they were by each of those turns. And they just remembered the turns in the road. And it was one of those sweet stories that I don't think I would have ever known had my dad not said, "Let's go, ladies. We're going to go get an ice cream together." And it's one of my favorite memories of being with them. All of these fantastic people, and you can see all of their children and their grandchildren behind them, spouses as well. Just were an integral part of who I am today. My Uncle Curly always kept me interested in what was happening in church, because he always had a little peppermint candy to give to me. And so I always sat next to my Uncle Curly because inevitably I'd get a tap on the shoulder and a little peppermint candy. I guess a wintergreen candy, not peppermint. It was a wintergreen one. And just this family, I probably should tell you where they're all from. This is taken in Gresham, Wisconsin. And they lived in and around the Gresham area for generations. And I say the Gresham area because my grandma also lived in Neopet and Kashina. One of my aunties was born in Neopet, the other one was born in Kashina, and my dad was born in Red Springs. And that's sort of all in that area in and around Menominee and Stockbridge reservations. And my grandma married a Menominee man, and so did my Auntie Madeline. And so I think there was some strong ties there. But through it all, Brothertown was always the conversations I heard around. My Uncle Curly helped organize a lot of the meetings in and around Gresham. My Auntie Dorothy spent a lot of time putting together materials to fight for our restoration way back when. I think my Auntie Madeline was the secretary for a while, taking notes and keeping the meetings in order. And that's just a little bit about my fantastic family.
That is awesome to have those pictures. What's the age of the picture on the right?
I don't know. I know that my grandma was born in 1912. So it has to be 1912, 1913, because they can't be more than, I don't think they're more than a year, right?
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing.
I got one last photo.
Oh, we're going to see it.
Just to tease my dad.
I know the next one, he's got a picture he's going to be sharing. Oh, that's nice.
So here's my dad. He's the youngest one. He's the baby of the family. There are 5 siblings. This is my dad, John Besaw. And this is my oldest uncle, Donald Besaw. This is my middle uncle, Ronnie Fuller. And my aunties, who are not shown there, are Honeybow Ebert, who I never knew her real name was Yvonne until I got older. I only know her as Honeybow. And my Auntie Bonnie, who was Lavon Day. And so that's my lovely family.
That's awesome, Amy. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Our next person that's going to share family is going to be Greg Wilson.
Hello.
Hi, Greg.
Hi, how are you?
Awesome. How are you?
I'm good. So, well, I come from a lot of Brothertown names in my family. Both of my grandparents were Brothertown. My grandpa through his mother, and my grandma through both of her parents. And I remember as a little boy being told, that's your Brothertown, and what does that mean? It goes, you're the last of the Mohegans. So I had that knowledge that somehow I was the last of the Mohegans. So I also like to sit around and listen to my grandma and her cousins talk about the old days and all the stories that they would tell. I was always very fascinated by all of that. So as I did more getting into my family, I knew that there were a lot of shirt-tail relatives that lived on the Oneida Reservation, where my grandmother grew up and my mother grew up. So I found out how they connected, being the Moore family. And following the Moore family, it's kind of neat that my ancestry goes to the first Indian reservation in the United States of Brothertown, New Jersey. So now Brothertown, New Jersey is not Brothertown, New York, which, all the Brothertowns come from. But some of us, especially if you're a Calvin or a Moore, come from originally from the New Jersey Brothertown reservation. So there was a prominent leader there, a sachem named Bartholomew Calvin, who they called Shawashkakung. He was actually educated at Princeton, and he was known as the last sachem of the Lenni Lenape. So the Delaware Indians are the Lenni Lenape, and he's the one who sold or had given away the tribal lands as the last of the Delaware Indians left New Jersey. So, and it's fascinating. If you go there today, there's a place called Indian Mills, and they have renovated some of the old houses. That is where the reservation was. And there's a book called The Autobiography of Dr. James Still. The Still family was a prominent Black family who lived in the area. They were free and they were educated. And James Still became the first African-American doctor in the United States. And he has a very interesting read on his autobiography. And he talks about old Job Moore. I guess old Job Moore liked his liquor. And one night he fell and he was run over by a team of horses. And from that, but Job's son, Job Jr., was the best friend of James Still. So they said if they got late at night, they could hear old Job Moore haunting the woods in the area. So, but Dr. Still does write about his friendship with the Moores. And so if you go onto the census records, my Job Moore, my Moore family is the same Moore family that lived next door to the Stills. So, and what's interesting is one of the younger brothers of Jim Still, next door neighbor of, my great-great-great-grandparents, the Moores, became very prominent in the Underground Railroad and actually became very close with Harriet Tubman. And if you saw the movie Harriet, that was out about a year ago, one of the main actors does portray Mr. Still. So there's a sense of pride with that. It looks like my great-great-grandmother, Sophia Calvin Moore, she never even went to New York. She came straight from New Jersey to Brothertown, Wisconsin. So a lot of them settled there between Stockbridge and Brothertown, while the rest of the family did end up in New York. So there was many different tribes that, combined in New York to formulate the Brotherton Indians. But, and a lot of them were from Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and even New Jersey, and the New York Ramapo Mountains. So, which is where the DeGroat family originated. And through the DeGroats, if you go back to the James DeGroat married Philinda Fowler, and Philinda Fowler was a direct descendant of the chief Uncas, who was he was portrayed fictionally in the movie The Last of the Mohegans, but he was really kind of the first of the Mohegans because he was very significant in breaking from the Pequot tribe and starting the Mohegan tribe, breaking from Pequot and making them Mohegan tribe. He was a very questionable individual because he aligned himself with the settlers against some of the other Indian tribes, but he did that so that they could survive. As time went on, and they flourished as a result, and then that's where Samson Occom is a direct descendant of Uncas and that whole situation. And then Samson Occom had two sisters. One was Lucy Tantaquidgeon, whose family is very prominent out in Connecticut with the Tantaquidgeon Museum. A couple of those ladies lived to be 100 years old. Gladys Tantaquidgeon was a healer and a medicine woman, and I have one of her books, and it's fascinating the things that she writes about. She was still alive when I started researching all of this stuff, so I got to talk to her niece at length and become friends. But the other sister was Sarah, and Sarah Occom married a Wyogs, and as you take that down a couple generations, you come to Philinda Fowler, whose mother was Lydia Wyogs, and Philinda Fowler married James DeGroat, and he apparently was lost at sea, and she was widowed, rather young, but she was rather prominent in the tribe, and she ended up moving along with her daughter, who was married to Bishop Samson Talbot, a black man who was a minister of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. So they had a home in Onondaga County, New York, and they became very, they also worked the Underground Railroad. And Samson Talbot was arrested several times for helping to give refuge to slaves. But he'd get out of jail and he'd do the same thing all over again. They just move and they kept doing it. But I was always proud that, you know, I had family members who did what was right instead of what was lawful. And I have a little bit of that inside me myself. And I think a lot of us do. So, so James DeGroat had a first cousin who was Joseph DeGroat. He married Polly Moore. So their children married each other. Harriet Lavinia DeGroat was the daughter of James and Felinda, and then John Morris DeGroat was the son of Joseph and Polly Moore DeGroat. So they were second cousins, and they married each other. And then that is my grandma's grandparents. So John Morris DeGroat worked on the Erie Canal while they were living out there near Deansboro. And while he was there, I don't know, I guess he was given some significant money for, or bartering in on a man who was facing some really hard times. And so he took his place in the Civil War. He ended up in North Carolina, and he became very ill and he died there while Harriet Lavinia DeGroat was pregnant with my great-grandfather, the youngest of her 9 children, Ed DeGroat. She had 9 children ranging in age from 16, her son Frank, all the way down to my great-grandpa, who was an infant, born a week or two after his father's death. So his father never saw him. At that time, they were relocating to Wisconsin, and it said the DeGroat family was known for 2 things. One was its musicianship, and a lot of people today, a lot of the descendants of the DeGroat family are musicians and very, very musical. And another thing the DeGroat family is known for is multiple births. So we have a lot of twins. I have twins. My mother had a twin brother and sister. My grandma's got twin sisters. My grandpa had twin brothers. I have first cousins with twins. So it's a lot of twins. And my grandma even had a first cousin that had triplets back around the turn of the century. So anyway, my great-great-grandmother, Harriet Lavinia DeGroat, she was a beautiful singer. She entered a contest in New York. She won the contest. And with that money that she won, she took her 9 children, ranging from a couple months to 16 years of age, and took the steamer from the Erie Canal up and around and down the Great Lakes into Brothertown, Wisconsin. So she was able to move her family there. And after that, some of the 9 children ended up in other areas. A couple of them went up to Shawano by the Stockbridge Reservation there. A couple went out to Minnesota. All of them went to where there were other organizations of Indians, though. One ended up in White Earth, Minnesota, at the reservation up there almost by North Dakota. Another ended up in Redwood Falls, Minnesota. And that's where my grandfather went. His oldest brother, Frank, was living in Redwood Falls. And my grandpa went to work. My great-grandpa went to work with them. A lot of the DeGroats were masons and did a lot of building. And then my great-grandfather was a plasterer. And he taught that trade to a lot of his family members. And then if you know the Cottrell family, like Courtney and Craig, their grandfather inherited that business, and then their uncle ran that business. And I believe one of their cousins today is still running this family business of plastering. So, but my great grandfather, they ended up coming back to Wisconsin, and he had 2 sisters on the Oneida Reservation. So he ended up there, and my grandmother was raised there, and the homestead is still there. My aunt is 94 years old and lives in it today, and we have a lot of rich history and a lot of connection with other tribes. Other than that, I just like to say, like my grandmother was an integral part of the Oneida community. She was given all the rights and benefits of other Oneidas. I don't think people really knew or asked whether she was Oneida or Brothertown, but she kept her, she loved to go for a ride, and she'd just tell me, you know, would you take me over down to Quinny? She had a cousin in Quinny named Rose Moon and another one named Della Welch. And she would love to go and visit these ladies. And they'd always tell the stories of when the relatives would come, all the work would stop. You're out in the field and you saw the carload come in of relatives, you just left your plow out in the field and you went in and you enjoyed your company. And Grandma never called and let anybody know she was coming. And when you were at Grandma's house, people would come in and they never had called and let them know they were coming. They just went, and everybody loved it. So I don't know, a couple of my stories.
Well, thank you, Greg. That was really interesting. And if you know the name of that book you were talking about the medicine woman that you were reading, I would love to get the title of that book as well.
Oh, okay. I don't. Yeah, it's a pretty generic name. I'll look and see what the title is. I don't have it with me right now. It's a wonderful book.
All right, thank you. We're going to turn it back over to Amy, and she's going to give us a little bit of information about Calumet and Cross.
Yeah, I'll be quick about this so that you all can ask some questions, and we can also maybe share some other family stories with each other. But really quickly, I'm on the board for the Calumet and Cross Heritage Society, and our organization's a nonprofit that is primarily composed of Brothertown people on the board, with a few allies, non-native allies, who are all interested in helping to share Brothertown history. And one of the more exciting things that we get to do, we do collaborate on some cool projects with Tribal Council. And on our board also sits Courtney Cottrell, who's our tribe's Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, which, if you all don't know, is an important field representing our tribe in any archaeological work, any historical work. She's a trained anthropologist and a professor at UW Green Bay right now, and just an amazing resource. So we partner with the tribe, the Tribal Council, on various projects. But one of the more exciting things that we do right now is every Wednesday night, we meet and discuss a little reading on some sort of book or text or article related to Brothertown history. And we wanted to open that up to you all. It's always open to anybody who would like to join. But right now we're reading Brad Jarvis's The Brothertown Nation of Indians. And a few of you who are on this Zoom right now already participate. And we just sort of sit and talk and read texts. We've got a couple of scholars who join us who are experts in the area, and they help us digest some of the more complicated pieces in the books. Yeah, that as a nonprofit, our job is what we want to do is help promote our history, the tribal history, and share it with others so that we can all sort of celebrate in the sort of unique history that Brothertown Indian Nation has.
So Amy, if somebody wanted to participate in your book club, how do they get registered?
The best thing to do is email, and I'll put my email address in the chat.
Can I jump in a second and just say that also in the book club, we have several people who are in New York, in the area where the Brotherton lived in New York. And sometimes that comes in really helpful when we're discussing something in a book.
I'm writing it down as well. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, and we'd love to hear from folks, especially if you've got ideas, sort of history related ways that we can engage or create events. Megan has helped us in previous years to plan out some guest speakers. And so we've had guest speakers do presentations, and those are always very exciting. But if folks have other ideas, please email. We'd love to be of service.
I heard you say it was on Wednesday nights. What time?
That's right. Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Okay, great.
And how do you get a hold of that book?
Oh, I bought the book on Amazon, but there are some independent bookstores. I'll put the name of the book in here again in the chat again.
That'd be great.
That would be awesome. And just so you all know, that is my beautiful mother, Sandy.
Ah,
Thank you.
no.
I have her brainwashed.
And some people join in the book club before they have the book, and they will sort of listen in. I think the book club does a really good job of digesting a lot of the main themes in the book, and picking up interesting details as well. So if you even just want to pop in and see what it's all about without having read anything, you're totally welcome. We'd love to have you.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for anybody that's been speaking or about Calumet and Cross? We did have a question in the chat, and it was about can people who are non-members get a card? I believe I have to find it again. I'm sorry.
Oh, a non-enrolled descendant card.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be me that asked that question. I unmuted.
Hi,
I don't know
Stephanie.
enough.
Hi.
I
I don't
think
think you can get a card, but you can get a descendancy letter if needed for schooling or something. I know they've given those out to non-enrolled.
Okay.
who would he contact in the office?
Linda Shady.
Linda?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody have any other stories that they would like to share about their family? Or I can share one thing that I'm fairly new to being a participant with Brothertown. And I was actually able to become a member, and I'm a cousin of Greg Wilson, who was talking. So I'm so excited to be here and to learn more about the family connections. And one of the things as we talk to each other about the families, even when we were talking to Aaron a couple weeks ago, you say, oh, well, I think, couple generations down, we're related type of thing. So it's really interesting to see how we all connect to each other. That's exciting for me.
Yeah, that's so true. And I only told a couple stories. I mean, there's a whole not, I only really went through my great grandmother. My grandfather has an entire Brotherton family with their own stories. I didn't even touch base on you know, our great great grandma Renee Rhoda Rhodes,
Right.
who was the Indian doctress, and it was portrayed by an actor at Old Sturbridge Village in Massachusetts to this day, as well as you know, some of the other well-known stories that connect us. So it's fun.
Greg, did you say Electra Rhodes?
Rhoda Rhodes.
Okay. Do you think
Electra Rhodes was my grandmother's great grandmother, and that was she's the granddaughter of Rhoda Rhodes.
So Lindsay, we're related, huh?
that's so cool? That's awesome.
We're related as well, because we descend. So my grandma Flora, who I showed you the picture of, her mother was Dora Welch, who married Zebulon Welch, and Zebulon is the son of Stephen Welch and Callista Johnson. But I think Callista's the daughter of Electa.
Right, Callista's Grandpa Johnson's sister. That's right, and they lived in Quinny.
Yep.
And then
So-
Rose Moon is actually the granddaughter of Stephen Welch, the one I would take my grandmother to visit. And that was Stephen Welch home in Quinny that we would go to.
I was just texting my dad saying, I think Della Welch is a name that I've heard before.
Yeah, she lived across the street from there.
Yeah.
But Greg, do you remember, I don't even know, 10 years ago now at least, Greg's kind of how I have started in all this, but my mom passed away, and actually Greg contacted me on Facebook asking if I was her son. And Greg knew my mom from going to get-togethers in Shakopee, I believe it was.
Oh yeah.
And you know, so Greg is a cousin, and has kind of got me involved a little more, which has been it's been interesting and a big learning experience. You know, all the history that we have.
We're in the
That's
same
it.
boat, Stefan, exactly same boat. And thank you, Greg. I'm so excited to be here and connect with everybody, all my new family.
Yeah. We actually came to the picnic, I think 2 years ago. And it was kind of funny because I was very nervous because, of course, I didn't know anyone. But we got there, and I'm friends with quite a few people on Facebook that were at the reunion. And right away, someone yelled, "Hey, our cousin's here." And it was just like coming home. Yeah, and it really was. And then what's even funner is I got 3 kids, and my wife and the 3 kids all went in the museum, and then they came out, and they're right away like, you know, "We got relatives that are on the wall in there." And I said, I know who you're talking about. Let's go in and look at them, you know, and we could tie it all together so nicely. It was just amazing.
That's wonderful.
Renee, tell them about, or can I tell them about Greg, how I met Greg? Because
Sure.
Greg,
Mom, go ahead.
okay. My name is Sandy Mackinnon. I lived up in northern Minnesota, at Virginia, Minnesota. And I moved here 10 years ago to Wisconsin. And a couple of years after I moved here, I got a letter in the mail addressed from my ex-husband. But inside of that letter was a letter from Greg. He had read the funeral of my father. Oh, he read the obituary. And I knew I was Indian. I had a lot of pictures of my old great grandparents and my grandparents. And but anyway, I was really excited because Greg introduced himself and who he was and told me how he got my address or how he contacted me. And so I contacted him immediately. But the thing that was so cool for me was that Virginia is not a big town, and and I didn't live there anymore for a few years, but my ex-husband still did, and I've been divorced quite a few years from him. But but we were still friends. And so the mailman, instead of just putting it back in and sending it back to Greg, he thought he thought he would be nice and go and bring it to my ex-husband and tell him that it was for me and if I could send it on, if he could send it on to me, and he did. So if he would have sent it back, I probably never would have been involved, and I probably never would have met Greg. And synchronicity played a part, and I'm just so excited about this, all that it happened so weirdly. And then Greg called and said that there was an opening to be eligible. So I went and hurried up and did everything that had to be done and to prove everything. And then he came and he visited, and we exchanged pictures, and I gave him some of my old Indian pictures and my of my family, and it's just been so exciting. So, and now with Renee getting involved, I'm just really, really excited to meet everybody. This is awesome. I just want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart that you can be part of my life. Thank you.
Yeah, we're all connected.
For sure, without a doubt.
And my wife keeps bugging me to tell a story here. I have an uncle named Clifford DeGroat, well, the great uncle. And one of the best memories I have of him, my grandma Pearl DeGroat, she had about 8 kids, and I don't know how many grandkids, but when all of us grandkids would get together up at White Earth, or in Dent even, which is not on White Earth, it's a little town south of there, Uncle Clifford would come to go fishing with us, but he would have his parade of grandnieces and nephews following him around town, and he always sang a song, and it's funny because we all remember it, but he would sing, hip, hip, I had a good job and I quit. First they hired me, then they fired me, then I got mad and I quit. And he would sing that over and over with this whole train of kids following behind him. And it's a lot of fun memories of Clifford and Edgar and, all the family up on White Earth.
That's amazing. That's awesome. I think everybody could write their own book of stories and kind of connect them like a big spider web.
That would be fun, huh?
It's
Yeah, that
fun
would be awesome.
Yeah, I realized I was living in Kenosha. Well, I mean, I was living in the Kenosha area for quite a while, and knew that there was one of your relatives, Renee, Marcy Boyer, was had raised her family in Kenosha. Well, she was like 95, 96 years old, so I did not think she was alive, but I reached out, and here she was. Not only was she alive, she was doing just fine. So we hit it off, and we ended up. I had about 3-4 years with her before she passed away. She was almost 100 when she died, and she's a wonderful lady. Reminded me so much of my grandmother. But she always told the story about our, great grandpa Johnson. He was a Civil War vet, but how Abraham Lincoln, he's supposed to be in a picture with Abraham Lincoln, and I'll look for that picture until I find it. But he took the first wagon load of African-American children to school after the Civil War.
Wow, yeah, you find that picture.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Can you clarify which Grandpa Johnson, Greg, you're talking about?
Joseph Manuel Johnson, the son of Zebulon and Electa Rhodes Johnson, brother of Callista Welch.
Wow, that is so cool to be able to tie the family way back. I know the family tree photo or paperwork that Greg has shared with us. I mean, I have names that go back to, I think it's the 1600s. I mean, it's just amazing to have that. I just don't remember the names because after a while it's all like this Johnsons and John and John Jr. And it's like, boy, there should have picked a few different names.
Yeah. you gotta make sure you look at the dates so you know who you're talking about. It's a lot of repeat names.
Yep.
And, you know, Joseph Johnson married Catherine Welch. She was one of the children of Henry and Lucy Skeesick Welch, and that's a whole nother huge line of people in the tribe.
Well, I
You
think
know,
that's Jessica's family, right? Skeesick?
Lucy Skeesick. It's a old name because one of the originals.
Very cool. Does anybody else have any other stories?
Not a story, but I'm really excited to hear that you can trace your family tree back to the 1600s, Renee, because I think we only have like mid 1700s. So,
Well, I gotta
awesome.
say, it is all because of Greg. I mean, as of like when my mom told the story, we all knew we were Native, but we didn't have any place to tie it to. So when Greg showed up into our family, that was just like an moment. And then I really, shame on me, haven't done anything with it for a few years. And then it's like, you know, this is ridiculous. I keep saying I'm going to do it. I just got to get off my duff and do it. So I'm so excited to be here. And one of the things too is that, you know, like Stefan was saying is, you know, you don't know anybody. So you come to this, you're a little under, you know, not sure if you're going to be welcomed or anything, but everybody that I have reached out to or spoke to or have, I mean, I just saying, hey, you know, how can I help? They're so welcoming and so open and willing to share information and just accept you into the family like your family. It's just, it's awesome.
Father blessings.
Yep.
This is Barbara Conway. I'd like to say something. My mom is in Minnesota, and we found out later, you know, about the ties with the Indian tribe. And I got the book, A Man Called Samson, from back 1580 to 1989, and that they did research on. And it had so much information in it. And Will Ottery and Rudy Ottery were the ones that put this book together. I was wondering if anybody else has knowledge of that book or has a copy of it.
Oh,
I have the book. I'm in the book.
Yeah, I'm in the book also.
Yeah, through my grandfather. My grandfather was a grandson of Sarah Sampson Baker.
Okay, and my mother's name was Johnson. It was Herbert Johnson in Todd County, Minnesota.
Oh yeah. Do you have the picture book that went with that?
Do I have the pictures? Yeah, I have the pictures that went with it also.
Yeah, that was nice. It had to be photocopies because at that time, you know, we hadn't made a lot of progress on nice pictures, but it's still nice to get an image of who the relatives are.
Yeah, and I have some old pictures that my mom had in a Foot Locker of the Johnson family and everything too.
Oh, nice.
So it's really, we've got quite a few of those. So it was really, and my mom's passed away now, but we still have the pictures. But the book has been great to have because you can follow it all the way back to the 1500s.
Wow, that's cool.
and nobody knows how to get a hold of that book?
They had reprinted it and were selling it at the tribal office. I don't know if there's copies left, but I know the last homecoming a couple of years ago, they still were selling that book.
I would like to have one. I would like to buy one.
Yeah, it's a great book to have.
Can somebody check into that? Greg, can you check into that to see if I can get a hold of one?
Sure.
That'd be super.
Also, I don't know if there's a website that I use called Alibris. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but sometimes they have out of print books and they have used books that you can buy. And when I was out there searching for Brothertown, they had quite a few different books out there about Brothertown. I don't know specifically if that was one, but that's just another option to look at.
How do you spell that, Renee?
I can put it in the chat.
Okay. I'll look into
I
that.
keep looking around my bookshelves because I have a copy of the book. We got to go and visit. I took my 2 kids up to visit Mr. Ottery before he passed away in New Hampshire. And they got to sit down and visit with him and have lunch with him. They're too young to remember, but it was a very special afternoon.
Those are all wonderful memories.
Yeah. I'm out in Boston, for those of you who don't know. And when I meet tribal leaders out here and I tell them I'm Brothertown, the first thing they do is say, "Welcome back, cousin."
Wow.
That's the other thing that's nice about having the Zoom. I mean, I like doing the in-person too, but we can connect with everybody all over the country. I'm in Wisconsin. My mom's in Wisconsin. I think Greg's in Illinois. Aaron's,
No,
I
I'm in
think in,
Wisconsin.
oh yeah, you are. You're in Wisconsin. That's right, Union Grove.
Yeah, I'm in
Yeah,
Virginia.
Oh, did you
Barbara,
say
where are you
Virginia,
from?
Barbara?
I'm from Virginia, Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Oh,
So, but we used to go up to Minnesota all the time. And I remember my mom, it was an uncle of hers, and Fowler was his name, the last name Fowler. And he would be on the riverbank fishing with his Indian blanket and everything. And my grandfather had died when my mother was young. He died of tuberculosis. And, you know, because they didn't have any immunity for anything like that. And so I never really got to know the Johnson side that well because, like I said, he had passed away when she was young.
What part of Minnesota did you go to?
Long Prairie.
Okay. Is anybody familiar with the Net Lake Reservation and the Boise Fort?
No.
You know anybody, any of those people related? Okay, I didn't know that either. I used to work up there, so I don't know if anybody was related to to the Brothertown or not. And I didn't know Brothertown at that time when I was working up there, so I couldn't ask them if they were familiar with Brothertown.
Yeah, and I will share this because I think it's important. I was surprised, you know, being from Virginia and everything like that, seeing the prejudice against the Indians that I saw from a couple of some of the Swedish relatives that had married into the family and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And some of their feelings about the Indians. I had never seen, you know, I didn't realize that was alive and well.
Oh, it still is, yep.
yep. Unfortunately, up there in Minnesota, when I was growing up too, there was some of that going on, and I don't know. I haven't been living up there for a while, so I don't know if it's gotten any better.
Yeah, I don't know either. But when I worked at the resident, I used to work for the vocational rehab out of the Minnesota government, and I used to have clients up in that lake and at Boise Fort, and they're both Indian reservations. And I went up there, and I went and I went into Ora one day into town or cook. I forgot when to cook or to eat my lunch. And I walked into the restaurant, and I sat down in one of the booths and waved to the lady, and she knew I was there. And then 4 or 5 other people came in, and she would go and wait on them. She never came to order from me, ever. So I had to get up and go to the counter and tell them that I was, you know, you saw me sitting here and I want to be, you know, I want to order something. And then she says, "Oh, I'm sorry. And then she did let me order, but it was so obvious when I was sitting there how everybody sat so far away and how I was ignored for all that time before she would even ask me to, if I wanted something, that I had to get up and do it. She wouldn't come to me in the booth. So that was a new experience for me. I never experienced that before. That was a town right out of the reservation, and there was so much clash And at that time, they had a lot of fighting. Oh, I'm trying to think of the name of the guy from the cities who, there was so much war, there was so much killing and stuff from some of the outsiders, and some of the AIM. Do you remember the old AIM they used to have? It was a group of young people. Anybody familiar with that?
Which, are you talking AIM?
AIM, yeah, it was headed
Yeah,
by.
I remember AIM. Yeah,
Yeah,
Russell Means, and yeah.
yeah, and it was headed by an Indian man outside some place in the cities, and they used to come up and they used to do some fighting, and it was just really kind of sad, you know, and people were shooting at you. One of my clients got shot because she was driving down the road and one of the AIM people were shooting at somebody across the road, and it hit her, and she didn't die, thank God, but there was so much of that hostility and stuff going on just among the people at the reservations themselves. And I was just heartbroken. But it was a really, really tough time for everybody then.
Yeah, we had the novitiate takeover in Gresham, and back in '75, the New Year's Eve of '75, and that got the attention of AIM, and they came out, and Billy Jack, the guy who played Tom Laughlin, Billy Jack, and Buffy St. Marie, and I think even Marlon Brando might have come out there, but it was.
Yeah, I think I've heard about that too. Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite, and as some of the people that were holed up in that novitiate, they didn't even know that I had a Churchill cousin, one of the Moors actually, who thought she was going out for New Year's Eve. She didn't know anything about it. They thought they were going over there to have a couple drinks, and next thing you know, they're in a standoff.
Yeah, it's kind of scary. It's kind of scary, all the stuff that was going on then.
Yeah.
It's over with.
You know, Greg, I was at an event and I met a tribal councilman from Menominee, and he said, "Oh, you're a Besaw?" And he said, "You know, you're Auntie Honeybow." When the novitiate was taken over,
Oh yeah.
They tried to call your Auntie Honeybow to go talk some sense into them, and you know, have them come out. and she politely declined, because my Auntie Honeybow used to work for the judge in Shawano, and she was like, I'm not getting in the middle of this.
Right.
Smart lady.
But that same councilman was telling me a story about Marlon Brando, how Marlon Brando was talking to everybody, talking about how, yeah, there needs to be more movies about Indians. And then how he says that he wants to be the Indian. He wants to be the actor playing the Indian. And they all laughed at him, and they said, "But you're so fat."
Yeah.
Then he decided to leave the novitiate.
Yeah. When they took over that novitiate, though, the caretaker's family was entertaining another family on New Year's Eve. So, you know, they came in and said they were taking it over, and briefly took them hostage, but then, you know, let them go. And actually the hostages got stuck in the snowbank on the way out. So all the guys who took over the novitiate came and helped them get unstuck so they could leave. Yeah.
That is such a beautiful property out there. And I just heard that somebody has purchased it.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know who. I had heard that possibly somebody from Menominee was going to buy it over and turn it into a cultural center. But I just heard that they were doing some tours. You know, they've got a beautiful river with some falls, you know, or it's not like falls, you know, just sort of water that moves down. But yeah, water that moves down rapids. It's really beautiful behind there.
Yeah, I've been there.
If you guys ever get a chance, yeah.
The mansion part is still standing. The novitiate part is gone. But you know, the whole thing was inspired by a woman, a socialite from Chicago, had built that mansion just for her daughter to heal. Her daughter had terminal illness, and she thought it would extend her life and help her heal. And unfortunately, the daughter died before the mansion was completed. So that's when the Alexian brothers bought it as and started their novitiate and, you know, home for priests there. So they ran.
Where
that
is
for a
this
long
at?
time. It's just outside of Gresham.
Yeah,
not-
just north of Gresham.
Oh, I need to get out more.
and the water there is just beautiful. Yeah, there's a little park just the other side of it where you can go and walk out on the rapids. And going there in the fall is awesome.
Awesome. Well, it is 12 after 5 or 5 o'clock here. So I really want to thank you all for sticking around longer than we had planned. I could keep this open for a while just because I love hearing all the stories from everybody, but I know that we said that we were going to try to keep it to 5 o'clock. So thank you all for participating. Greg, Amy, thank you for telling your stories and sharing the Calumet and Cross information. I hope that I'm going to be able to take a look at your book club. That sounds exciting as well. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I hope we can do this again fairly soon.
That would be lovely.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.